Hi folks, Dave Schmidt here. In this series of new videos that I'm going to be doing, I want to be sharing with you what I believe some of the things that we can be doing about the upcoming global currency collapse. I've been mentioning that in the last couple of weeks, and also in the last couple of weeks I put out a series of newsletter videos about what I believe about the RVGCR. And I want to say thank you for all of you that have written in and expressed the thankfulness and the gratitude that you have been experiencing about being willing to tell the truth. The video that I put out 2 weeks ago kind of astounded me, is because I have had more views on that YouTube video than anything that I have had in the last year. And what's interesting is I don't know if anybody posted it on any of the Dinar Guru sites. Therefore, what it means is it's being spread by word of mouth because you're capturing it. You're understanding what is there. And literally scores, if not over 100 of you have emailed to say thank you because you're relieved to get to understand what's truly going on and what's happening. Now, in those videos, I have said, does it mean that it will never happen? No, it is not. But I do clearly say there will never, ever be a public RV because it's just not possible with the dollars to be expressed. But the most important thing then is, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, I'm going to share with you this week and in a few following weeks the perception that I'm beginning to see myself about this upcoming global currency collapse. And I just shared with you what is a really key word. The key word is perception. We each choose to view this through various means, through various scopes, or various colored lenses of how we choose to perceive our world. Because see, our perceptions, how we choose to view something, is how we develop our beliefs. And it's in the developing of our beliefs that will sometimes keep us stuck. Because we believe something, because we perceive something, and then we end up staying there. And when we get stuck there, we aren't willing to move on or make shifts and transitions, and then we wonder why things aren't developing the way that we want them to be. Our perceptions are extremely powerful. And I'm really learning this through this whole process myself, where over the last year and a half I've been doing these newsletters, because I'll put out a newsletter, I'll make a statement, and I'm very clear about to myself what I have to say. But it's so interesting to watch the comments that come in and the different perceptions that people have. Because I can make a statement and I will get newsletters on both sides of the issue, diametrically opposed to each other about what I had to say. What does that mean? What it means is most of us, we already have a preconceived idea of what we want it to be, and then we're reading into that what is being said, and what it is, we're not listening clearly to the statements that are made. I've made a lot of statements about the whole RVGCR, and most of mine are very different than what appears on a lot of the other guru blog sites. They can choose to say what they want. That is the choice of their perception. And I'm going to choose to say what I want because for me, a lot of it is no longer just perception, but it's based on the knowledge and the experience that I've had and the investigation that I've done and the people that I've developed the network with. And predominantly those people are the Dragon family, which their headquarters is in China. And as you know, I've made 3 trips to China, 1 trip to Europe, and I've personally met twice with the ambassador, who is their public spokesperson. The ambassador has made this statement. The Red Dragon and other members of the senior elders have made this statement. And not only that, there are a number of credible writers who are professionals and understanding the international and global financial structure as well as Wall Street are strongly making the statement, this world, predominantly the Western world and the G7 countries, are headed for a global currency collapse. One of the best ones is Edward Griffin, the author of the book The Creature from Jekyll Island, and the creature is the Federal Reserve. It is the best book that has ever been published that details the purpose, the history, the actions, and the intent of the Federal Reserve. And in there, he clearly outlines a case that says they have one primary mission, world and global dominance, to become extremely powerful and wealthy at the expense of us, the everyday folks. They clearly want to disempower us and to not only place us, but to keep us into a form of financial slavery. When I started this whole series, if anything, my primary goal was to develop a way and a means to help us free ourselves from this financial slavery. Now, not only is it Edward Griffin, but another gentleman by the name of Jim Rickards has put out 2 books called The Currency Wars and The Coming Collapse of the Dollar. Jim Rickards is very well qualified to write for that. He was the selection of our Department of Defense to develop what is called a tactic and a training exercise of global financial warfare. And he had spent months with the Department of Defense developing the program, the training, the expertise, and everything, because they recognize him as one of the best experts in understanding what happens in global finance and how finance becomes a means of warfare between countries as well. Another very, very well qualified individual is Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. And some of you have seen his videos and even some of the recent books that he has put out. Dr. Roberts is the former Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury in the Reagan administration, which basically means he was the number 2 person. And that number 2 person is usually the policy expert that becomes the advisor to the director. Dr. Roberts was also the father of what is called Reaganomics. Now, you can have your view and your opinion on that. That's neither here nor there. The important thing is this is a very well qualified individual who has come out and has become a whistleblower on the corruption that takes place within the cartel banking system that we have around the world and their desire to literally, they want to create this collapse. Now, I'm going to share part of a video of an interview that was with Edward Griffin, of Creature from Jekyll Island. And he says that all of his predictions have, for the most part, are in the process of coming to pass, but he also admits, it says, the one thing that he has been off on is his timing. And he says, I can't really tell you because I started doing the research on this all the way back in the 1970s. And I thought this was going to happen in the 80s and the 90s. But all I know is that somehow these countries keep kicking the can down the road and keep doing the inevitable delay. But in this recent video, he says it's coming to the point where they really can't delay much more.
I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us today, a brand new guest. It's somebody that I bet you I've had at least 20 different requests from people over the last few years to get this guy on. We're talking about G. Edward Griffin. He's done so many things in his career. He's done a bunch of geopolitical work. Of course, he's the writer of the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, all about the Federal Reserve. Also, he's even done things on cancer. Thank you, Mr. Griffin, for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Well, thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to talk about, everybody loves your book. I don't know how many copies you sold. I bet you a ton of them, The Creature from Jekyll Island. So I want to talk to you about monetary policy and endgame theory and where we are in the arc here. Where do you think we are in the arena of printed Federal Reserve notes that are sloshing around all over the globe?
Well, Greg, you didn't know it, but that was probably a bad question to ask me. And the reason I say that is because I have, fortunately, I've been very right on my predictions, but I've been very bad about timing. I remember when I first became aware of the real problems that are going on in the world way back in the 1960s, and I thought by the end of the 1960s that we were in the end game. Well, we were in the end game, of course, but we were in the early end game, and I guess that's probably still the correct way for me to answer the question. I don't really know. The question usually is phrased in how much time do we have left before everything falls apart, and I don't really know the answer to that. It's amazing to me how resilient the economy has been, and we've had a lot of flywheel action from a very healthy economy a couple of decades ago, and so it's amazing to me that they can keep the bubble patched and keep it from bursting. But to tell you what really is on my mind is I don't see how the international structure can be held together with the great cycles that are going on and the great convulsions that are going on in the economy. I just don't see how it can go on more than a couple of more years at the most. But with the caveat that I've been wrong before on timing. But I think the more important question is we know what's coming. I remember years ago I was talking to some some people in Montana, I believe it was. They were ranchers up there that had these big ranches, and the question came up in casual conversation is, something like this. Well, Seth, what do you think? We're going to get a big freeze this year? And the answer was, well, I don't know whether it's this year or the next year or the next year. We get them on an average of about every 9 years. We don't know when they're coming, but we know they're coming, and so we prepare. I think that's really the bottom line. We know it's coming. We don't know the exact time, but it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. And once people understand that, then the other question that usually follows makes more sense. Well, what can we do about it to protect ourselves and perhaps to protect the system that we're in?
It is an inevitable. So he says, what happens in this currency collapse? There is one predominant thing, and it's called hyperinflation. It's happened in various times in history around the world, and he says, and the United States is not exempt from basically what you call international law and international issues around finance. The United States is very likely going to experience what is called a hyperinflation, and he details what he means by that. So for us, the question is, what do we do to prepare for that? How do we prepare ourselves? And what are some of the things that we can do? Like you, I started into this RVGCR issue a couple of years ago where I got deeply involved into it with this expectation and the waiting that this RV was going to take place. And I have come to a conclusion. It's been a learning process for me and for all of us. And some of you said, well, you said this a year ago. You said this 15 months ago. Yes, I did, because that's what I knew and understood at that time. But this is a constantly changing scenario. And issues are constantly changing, and I'm in a learning curve just as you. So when I bring this to you, it's what I know at the time. But here's what I do know. I am absolutely convinced there is not going to be a public RV. And I'm not the only one saying that. A lot of the other dinar gurus are saying that as well. They get it, and they understand it. And in the private exchanges, it all has to come down to who has the money to pay for it. And if they can't explain where the money's going to come from, well, that's the inevitable. I believe I know that, and I've been in touch with it, and I've seen it, and I've experienced it, and I've been around it, where the Dragon family has this money. But I'm learning a lot more about them as well. What I've come to learn is that this family has been around for hundreds of years, waiting for this position at a time such as this. But I also know they just don't go around and give money. It is not going to be something that they're just going to hand it out at will. It has always been the family's policy and practice. If you wish to receive something from them, then you need to put some effort and energy into giving something to them first. They've been financing countries. They've been financing worldwide organizations such as the World Health Organization and others for years, if not decades. But every one of them, the first time they come to the family, they have to make an effort to give something. Part of that is ancient Asian culture. You come with a gift, and you give the gift, and then it's given back in return. And all of that evolves around the principle, give, and then it is given unto you. It takes the effort and the energy for us to first give. And that is why the ambassador, as they are going through the project, the financing of the project, and he has said this is a test project at this time. It's a test case to show to the family that this can work. That's why he asked for a little bit of investment up front. And some of you are complaining about $100 or $200 investment, but what you don't know is that he takes your proposal and submits it to a professional law firm that basically is professional around grant funding. And if you had to pay for that on your own, it would cost you over $2,000. He's paying for all of that. So if you want to be griping and critical and complaining, saying, oh, they're just getting money, please. They're bringing in a couple $100 and then turn around and paying for over $2,000 for something of their benefit. Projects have already been approved. Now, the releasing of the funds, I don't have a date on that. I'm just the messenger. I'm not the decision maker. But I want to come back to perception. It's amazing how critics are so quick to be so critical without knowing the facts. And if I want to be honest, all it is is a display of their own ignorance and stupidity in the comments that they make. And it's a reflection of their unwillingness to believe anything that can take place. Perception is key. And sometimes your perception gets locked into a certain belief system, and you lock yourselves into that and you aren't willing to change. And underneath it, there's a reaction of what I call a projection or a fear of you not getting what you want. So then you have to be negative, attack, and criticize. Well, how do you change perceptions? The biggest and the most effective means is the freedom to be willing to question. Questioning doesn't mean doubting, it means inquiring. Because when you question, you open yourself up to there's another possibility about how I perceive this. I may perceive it this way. And I can lock myself into a belief system and I will stay there and I'll be stuck there. But when I begin to question and say, well, what about this? Is this a possibility? Well, how is this to transpire and take place? Then I open myself up to other avenues, other possibilities, and other venues of how this could take place. Now, in the coming weeks, I'm going to share with you some things that we can do in the meantime. And why am I doing that? Is because I'm an absolute believer that if you wish to receive, you have to give first. And the giving is not so much about the dollar amount, it's about the energy of the activity that you invest into it. All of this, from my understanding and from my perception, we are the test case. Those of you who want to believe with this, those who you want to move forward with this, those who you want to participate in this. And I want to reiterate that the ambassador shares things at my workshops and again at Charla's conference about a week and a half ago that he does not share on the internet. And some of the information he shared there is very, very good news, but don't expect it to happen overnight. So what do we do in the meantime as we prepare ourselves for this coming global currency collapse? Every one of the experts that I told you about, they all recommend absolutely one thing first: get out of debt. Now, in the next week or two, and I'm waiting for the organization to make some changes to their computer software, I'll be bringing you a debt elimination program that has been successful and is working. Charla shared this at her conference, and then it was amazing how many people were quick to sign up. The individual who's been doing this has been doing it for 12 years, and he has a 100% success rate. It's all legal. It's been tested by the U.S. Supreme Court, and what it is, it's also a challenge to the deep corruption and fraud within the Federal Reserve cartel banking system of how they want to keep us in slavery. We can sit back and wait and do nothing and continue to be victims of this cabal and banking cartel that, in my estimation, is not going to change their ways for a period of time. Or we can take a step of action to free ourselves from this financial slavery, and in the process to make a social statement that we are not willing to sit back and be slaves anymore. And in the process, we can prepare ourselves from an impact of this upcoming global currency collapse. Now, as I said, I'm in the process of working through this myself, but I'll tell you one thing, it worked for Charla. She started this in late January, and within 3 months, she had eliminated over $10,000 of credit card debt, and she had received all 3 of the major credit reporting agencies, and all 3 of them said accounts closed at the request of the lender. You heard that correctly. They just closed the accounts. Why? Because there's a legal process of challenging what is called the fraudulent lending activities of this banking cartel. They operate in a fraudulent manner at our expense. The government tolerates it because they think it's good for the economy. But it's another one of those issues where they just become more powerful, more wealthy, while they basically put us into what I call a debasing manner, to basically take away our empowerment of being free ourselves and to keep us in this position where we become immobilized, we're not able to do much. I absolutely believe there are some very, very good times for us coming. But in the process, there will probably be some challenging times to come along the way as well. And the key to all of that is the perception that we choose to bring into it. Am I going to perceive it that I'm a victim? Am I going to perceive it that it's all negative? Am I going to perceive it that the world is going to collapse? And am I going to perceive that I'm going to be sitting back, waiting in fear, say, RV happened, I got to have this money so I can rescue myself? I'm sitting back possibly and looking for a savior, that's something that is outside of me that's going to come in and fix my problem. When we realize that the vast majority of people who become successful in their endeavors are the people who take action. They take a form of action to improve their own lives. They don't wait for something outside of them to come in and rescue them from the situation and the perception that they've developed around themselves. It's the action and the activity where giving begets giving back. Give, and it shall be given back to you. I'll introduce to you a second program as well that's turning out to be very successful for some people about how we can step into helping each other. These are the activities that we can take ourselves to basically step into believing, to changing our perception that we do know that a new world is possible. We do know that I don't have to be a victim of this upcoming global currency collapse. I don't have to put myself into a position where the slavery only becomes empowered upon me and in a deeper perspective. I get to be somebody that steps out, begins to believe, and I'll bring to you reports of others that are doing this as well so you can realize you're not all alone in what you're doing here. This is a time for us to step up and begin to take action and activity. The reports coming from so many of the different experts along with the ambassador says they're looking at possibly this September. Now this is a constant changing scenario, but know that it's very likely it's going to happen. I believe it, but I'm not going to sit back and just worry and think, what can I do? And even taking actions that are fear-based. I'm going to take actions that are very positive-based, that can change my existing financial condition and to give me hope for the future as well. It's time for us to step up and develop what I call community and beginning to help each other. Let me give you an illustration. Edward Griffin in his book talked about how did towns and cities become built, all the individual homes and the houses that the people had, in a time, in an era, where hardly anybody could get a real estate loan to build a house. What happened was community. An individual would say, I have the money for the materials of my home. Yes, I can borrow a small amount, but I need your help. And so the community, literally scores of people would come together and help build that one home for that one family. And then the next week, they would build a home for someone else who was a part of it. And that first home, the individual paid it forward by when to help others, and then another, and another, and another. They understood the power of community and helping each other through this process. In many ways, we have lost that sense of community around financial issues, of how we can help improve ourselves and empower ourselves and give ourselves the lives that we want. Most of us go out and we work our jobs. And in some ways, we're slaves to our jobs because the jobs consume most of the time of our week. And between basically our jobs and raising our families, we don't have much time for ourselves at all. Some of you barely have time to listen to all these videos and the radio programs that I have. But fortunately, through the power of the internet, you can download them and you can listen to them throughout the week as you want to. But in this empowerment process, we lost a lot of that because we shifted to what is called empowering the corporations instead of empowering community. We take the money that we earn from our jobs, and then we go out and we buy and we purchase and we consume that gives the money to the corporations. And the profits go to the CEOs who make multi-million dollars a year and to the stockholders. And the CEOs and the stockholders become first at the expense of the community. There is a program that I'm going to share with you that gives us the opportunity to bring community back, where instead of giving the money to the corporations and to the CEOs and empowering the wealthy, we can start giving it to each other and paying it forward to each other. That'll come up in a couple of weeks as well. So stay tuned with me in these upcoming weeks as we are preparing for new direction, new development for us, and the acquiring and the perception of developing a new sense of hope. Yeah, the road's going to be probably kind of rocky in the upcoming months, but it's as we develop community together is where we empower each other. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be able to take into a step of a leadership position and help us work through this. You get to take it, mold it, mend it to whatever fits for you. And if you don't want to participate, that's totally your choice. And how you choose to perceive it is your choice. But I can tell you one thing. Almost all people that acquire what they really want, they all made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. They learned as they went along. They tried many times and quite often failed many times before success finally came around. I'm experiencing that. My life for my first 58, 59 years was constant trying, failing, not achieving what I wanted to, until all of a sudden I came to a point where there was a breaking open. And then all of a sudden everything began to fall into place. Everything I share with you now has been an accumulation of basically what was my 58 years of experience. And then all of a sudden, a door opened. And I was able to just step into it. And I was able to take what I do well, what I am gifted at, and what I love to do with the accumulation of all those years of experience. And it's making sense. And so many of you express that. And I want to say thank you. And for me, I absolutely believe this. Charla absolutely believes this. Her Yes ladies absolutely believe it. And now all of them that attended her Yes conference are capturing this vision that this is a divine assignment for us. People get to choose how they will perceive the issue. And you can choose to be on the sidelines. You can choose to be in a position of waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never really comes. But in the process, a catastrophic event comes your way and you wonder why you are where you are. Or you can choose to shift your perception and to start taking action and to get on board. And the key to all of that is to let go of your fear. Not only does questioning help you change your perception, but questioning will also let you see what stops you, what hinders you, what are the blocks in the way for you accomplishing the things that you wish to accomplish within your life. We're up for some big shifts and changes. I believe all of us have some really good things to look forward to. Rocky for some, hopeful for others, because all those things are as indications that we're on the right path for a shift and change. And before the new can come in, the old has to go away. And the old doesn't go away overnight. It shifts and develops over a process of multiple steps and over a period of time. And sometimes this time can develop into months and even a few years. Do I have a time frame on all this? No, I don't. Not any more than hardly anybody else. And I'm not going to try to project any dates. But I will choose to step into things being very positive. I will choose to step into taking action. And I will choose to do what I'm doing here for you. How you choose is your choice. I'm trusting that all of you are going to choose wisely. Thank you very much, and stay tuned. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.